Happy Monday. Thank you for joining us again in another Back to Basics Practice Management. I'm your host, Sharon Johnson, and our topic for today is career development and work life balance. I think all of us can learn about what is career development and work life balance, and I'm excited to have with us Latika S. Vines. She is the founder of Visionary Initiatives, a career workforce development organization providing learning strategies, policies, and programs to support the current and future career development and retention of working moms. So I'm excited about our guest. She brings in a breadth and depth of experience. And let me just continue a little bit about her background, and we're going to dive into this topic. Um, Latika has more than 18 years of workforce development and corporate training experience, working in both private and public sector to solve their learning and development and succession management challenges. Latika is the winner of a Commissioner's Award for her work in career development, and she is an author of 4 books and co-author of 4 books, which one of them is actually a bestseller. And she also has a podcast, and we'll mention that later down the line as well. Excited to share that information because I myself is one of her listeners. So I have benefited from her infinite wisdom and nuggets that she shared as a working mom. And lastly, Latika partners with tech, law enforcement, and professional services organization to develop their workforce, particularly their working mothers, through career development, um, workshop strategies, and coaching to increase, employee satisfaction, improve productivity, and retention and career mobility. All buckets that we're going to touch in. And so, without further ado, I'm going to bring in our special guest, Latika S. Vines. Hi, Latika. How are you?
Hello. Good morning. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you for being our guest. I appreciate coming in to such a topic that I do think, as a lifelong learner, again, this is my personal opinion, it is important in our professional lives to be able to have a career development, whether you are in corporate or nonprofit or a profit organization, and as well as work-life balance. So these are key areas that I do think, as an organization or organizations, depending on your industry, you happen to be in tech, law enforcement, and professional services. I'm in healthcare, but that translates across all industries in the relationship of career development and work-life balance. So I don't think that it's any different from one for the other. Having said that, when I ask you, my first question is, what are some ways to build, that employee career development in the organization? And I want to ask us a subtext to that is, if an organization's doesn't have anything yet. We don't have anything in our, playbook about that. What should we do? What are some of the steps that we can start with that? And then conversely, an organization that does have, a learning environment and can provide and have access, and but what can we do to improve that or enhance that for the employee, for their staff and employees? So those are my first question and 2 subsects. So let's dive right in.
Absolutely. Well, I honestly believe the first step, the most pivotal step, is culture. If you do not have a culture that fosters learning, that fosters career development, that fosters professional development resources, then you will not be able to have the success that you want when it comes to developing your employees, providing them what they need to be successful in your organization. But it ultimately starts at the top: leadership. And leadership has to foster. Not only do they have to foster, they have to embody the culture. Everything that they say, everything that they do has to say that this is important. You are important to me. Whether you leave 2 to 3 years from now or you stay here for 30 years, you are important. So let me develop you personally and professionally so that you can be the best employee, period. But it starts with the culture, having a culture that allows the employees to grow.
And that is a significant first step. That's our first pebble, right? And I agree with you. Leaders definitely are the ones that are determining the mission and vision for their organization and how they would like to take, that organization, steer that ship in the way along with their employees to be able to, as you said, build that learning culture in the organization. To dovetail that, we also have managers. Our managers are the ones that are, on the daily to day operations, have touch points with our front lines, and is able to, have a idea of what that vision and mission is from their leaders, but then it's enforcing or producing support of that work. So it's, doing the right things, to stay in the path of that learning culture that you just mentioned. So critical and pivotal point. What's the next step there? Now that we have Pebble 1, what would be our next, Pebble 2? Now that we've actually, okay, our leaders are on board, we have something that we've created. Now what's next thereafter?
Absolutely. And it's creating the tools, making sure that you have those tools, which I know we'll get into later, but making sure that you have a plan. What is your plan to develop your employees? That can be mentorship, internally or externally, coaching. There's so many things that employers can do to ensure that they evolve their employees. But mentorship is probably one of the biggest ones that you can do in house. You also have the opportunity to, one of my favorites, when I can't wait till we get into the tools part, but one of my favorites is having the access to ensuring that employees know, again, you care, that they want to stay. So we're talking about retention, but the access to those resources. And I'm trying not to get into our next question. Those resources that are pivotal for their career growth. And when I mean resources, we talked about mentorship, we talked about coaching, but what is the plan? How does an employee grow from one point in their career in your organization to another? How do they grow from this position to another position in your organization? How can they commit personally to another level of mastery in your organization? And that goes to a plan. What plan do you have for them? And that plan could be anything. That plan can include, job aids. That plan could be on the job training. That plan could be shadowing, job shadowing. That plan could be so much. But what is the plan that you have? And I think that's important when we're talking about career development for employees. What's the plan? Because it's great that we say this is what we want and this is where we're going, but what is the plan? How can you say, or how can you demonstrate that you care for your employees? And that's the plan. And also verbalizing that plan of, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to move forward. This is what's available to you. This is what we as leadership are going to do for you. But it's that plan of how we're going to move forward. And I'm trying not to jump ahead of myself, because when we get into the resources, that's what it's really, about what it is that we, as leaders, as organizational leaders, even as HR practitioners, what we can do to support the employees in their career development.
Well, we're going to be diving in very soon, so it's not going to be too far longer. So I agree. There should be a plan, and I think in that plan we can even layer in an assessment. What do we have in our toolbox, right? What is in our toolbox, both from a non-existent learning culture at the moment or something that's already in existent from a learning culture already. We still have to have an assessment, and to your point, in that's part of the plan, right? So we assess what we have in our toolkit, and then we map out into the plan. I would, just as a sidebar, and then we're going to get to the resources, I think there's a polling that should probably happen. Do you agree, from an employee stance of like, what do they want to learn? How do they want to learn, all these things? And I think that we want to bring that into, the assessment, our plan, and then, a polling from our employees to find out what is it that they would want to learn and how do they want to be developed, right? So then that segues into my second question of what general tools can we use and what is the best way to have that career development conversation with employees. Now we have, obviously we have that macro level where you communicate, what's available, et cetera, et cetera. But then we also want to get to the micro level of, from a manager's perspective, and that, if they are having a one-to-ones with their employees, or however that communication is done through their performance evaluation, or even prior to that, the understanding of what is their, employee or staff's desire. So let's dive into that tools.
Absolutely. Just to segue on what you were saying about assessing, for an organization that may not have the budget, maybe they're just starting out, but they realize that career development is important for the bottom line of their organization, for the success of their organization. It's important for you to evaluate what is it that you currently have that you're able to give to your employees. And if you do not have the budget for career development, learning and development, or maybe that's not something that you valued at first. When we think about core values of an organization, a lot of times learning development is not included in the core value. So when you are reevaluating your business model, when you're reevaluating how you do business within your organization, look at what you currently have. When I was, this was a few years ago, and I would say a few, this was about 9 years ago, I had the opportunity to assess what we currently had to build a career development resource toolbox, which we called a roadmap. And we looked at what we had. We looked at our budget. We did not have a budget at all, but we knew that this was something that the employees needed, what they said. And we also, something that's very important for leaders, is we looked at the data.
Mm-hmm.
Our data was saying in our exit surveys, in our partnership with public surveys, they were saying that people were leaving, our employees were leaving because there were no tools. They did not have any access or had the knowledge to know that they could stay and they could grow.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that data, we understood, okay, we need to create a tool that allows them access, easy access, to understand, okay, if they come in from an academy level and they want to go to an executive level, what are the steps in between to get
Right.
there? And how long will it take for them to get there? And so we looked at what we had, and at the time it was Microsoft SharePoint. And this time, SharePoint was at the stage where everybody was using
Right.
it. It was brand new, to most organizations. We didn't really have the concept of how we were going to use SharePoint, but we said we're going to use SharePoint. And we had one part of the team which did all the focus groups to figure out what is it that employees needed, what they wanted, where or how they could get to, the executive positions or just the mid-manager positions. How could they get there? And then we had another part of the team that did all of the IT work. So we partnered with OIT and said, okay, IT, this is what we need. Can you do this? Can you make this interactive so that when an employee clicks on this tool, SharePoint, they can easily maneuver, they can navigate to the different boxes that we could go. And what we did is, I was so excited about it. We did this or created this roadmap as if it was an actual roadmap. So, on a highway, you have your
Right.
exit signs, you have your
Mm-hmm.
billboards on the side, you have all these other little signs of, hey, you are such and such miles away from this exit. That is what we mimicked. That's how we designed this toolbox or this tool roadmap. And what we were able to do is allow the employees to see where they could go in the organization, whether they wanted to stay at a team member level or they wanted to go all the way up to an executive. but it allowed them the access to understand where I could go or I could stay. I don't have to leave. I can get promoted. And we stress that through our leadership, all the way up to our executive leadership to communicate. This is the tool that we have for our employees. But we recognize first, we didn't have the budget, but we also recognized that this is something that we needed. And so we were able to create this. And in our first year of creating it, we were able to successfully help the organization to understand that career development is important. It's important for your bottom line, it's important for your employees. And then we were able to defend or justify the need for a budget to keep this going because we just focused on the professional or what we call the administrative personnel. Now, with the attention, now with the budget, now with the support of our leadership, we were now able to expand that to all of the positions within our organization. So it grew, but it was us really evaluating, assessing what is it that we have? What is it that the employees want? Why is it that our employees are leaving? We have the data of why. Now we can take it to another level and say, okay, how can we change this around? Again, it's the culture. We were able to change the culture just by listening to the employees, allow them to know that they have a voice, and us implementing a resource that they could use at any time to help them grow in their career. So it truly made a difference in the organization, and oh my goodness, I carry that around with me everywhere I go because it was such a pivotal moment in my career and a pivotal moment for the organization because we were able to change the culture.
And that you've given me some really pivotal points here. So let's put that bullet right. So one, we didn't have a budget,
Right.
so we didn't have anything to work with, but we worked with what we had, right? So I think that's the point that we want to stress. So, for wherever you are in the organization, whether you are non-existent in this plan or existing in this plan, assess what you have in your toolbox. Is it something that is relevant and has a value add or value proposition for your employees to be able to enhance their career development? The other thing that I think was also good was data. Absolutely, I think you should look at the data to find out where it is, even as a starting point. In what employees are saying, and if you're able to data mine that information and look at that and review and add it to your layer of assessment, then you can kind of see where you want to target your efforts, right, in the way of how you want to grow your employees. So, for instance, and we're going to get to this in a minute. When you mentioned about, like SharePoint was a new thing, right? Everybody had like we don't know, but we're going to adopt it, but we're going to use it, et cetera, et cetera. But we kind of don't know yet how to do this. You've taken that and put a steps and process so that employers are able to understand how it is that they're going to be able to grow and what does it take, and then that communication. For me, though, I think the key part there is communicating to the current employees that you have, not so much as the folks that have already left, but the current employees, to say, we listen to you. We now have a strategy. We're starting small, to see if what we can grow in the way of career development. It's a step-by-step process. And I think what people need to understand in organizations also is that when significant changes happen, it takes time. It takes a bit of time, at least 18 to 24 months in a significant change. And then you got to anchor that change. In anchoring that change, that also requires a bit of time as well. It isn't that it's going to happen overnight, but anchoring that change and knowing that, as you keep walking towards what your plan is going to be, that is going to, the outcome is going to be sticking through that career development. There might be some changes along the future just because of nuances that are out there, but yeah, you are on a trajectory that you put in place that you're going to develop your employees. So that again is anchoring that practice and seeing the results that folks are actually taking advantage of that benefit for what you offered in terms of career development. That said, I want to just put a little bit of an example from a healthcare perspective. I do think that there are opportunities in practices, be independent, for those independent practices that sometimes budget might be restrictive in the way of, providing career development. But there are ways that is not so expensive. If you have a certified medical assistant that is ready to be a renewal for certification, that might be an opportunity to offer, to pay for that certification. How about CPR? The necessity of a CPR class. That might be something that you can offer, and you might get a group rate or something that's not going to be so much. And then again, Microsoft Office, has evolved over time. They keep improving, but you might have, and I know you're going to mention this soon, is the champions. We're going to have champions who's going to know it, that you have folks that are computer savvy that can help some of the current staff that you may have that aren't computer savvy. And I also think that there are customer service classes that aren't tremendously expensive that you can, avail to be able to do a career development that way. And the other is we're working with electronic medical record, right? There's always tools that are updated and things like that. And maybe you have two people that are, again, I go back to champions, that can help the group when any updates are happening. So I do think that for an organization that you just mentioned, that is not only pride, but also, being able to build that foundation and then to continuously thrive within that foundation with some changes. I totally agree. I think that is such a wonderful start for, someone, an organization that may or may not have career development, solid in their organization. So let's flip to the ones that are already, they have a career development plan. It's in their, even in their HR benefit, it's in there, as far as like, what career trajectory and whatnot. So how do we enhance them? How do we keep, anchoring what they've already got? Because, education changes, the technology changes, things about courses also change. So what would you help us with in terms of that type of organization?
Absolutely. And I think it all stems back to culture. Making sure that your leadership understands that this is the way that we're going to go. We are making a dedication, a commitment to develop our employees. And so with that, you can incorporate mentorship. You can have an in-house mentorship program. You can also have a championship program or allyship. I heard someone say that this morning.
Okay.
But with that, what that means is that you have someone that is going to speak on behalf of an employee. You're going to help them be able to, we've always heard the term that there's going to be someone that will mention your names in rooms that you're not allowed to be in. That's what a champion is, and that's what they will do because they have your best interest at heart. And leaders can do that. And so having an in-house and informal program that you can do that with or for your employees is important. You also have an opportunity to have you got the mentorship, the championship, performance review conversation. So we have these, so many of us dread those annual meetings.
Right.
Right. And so what you can do is you can switch it around as a leader, as a manager. Take a few minutes out of that hour that you're meeting with your employee and ask the question, what is it that you want for your career? You mentioned, maybe an employee needs to recertify, on CPR. Maybe they need to recertify on something else. As an organizational leader, you have opportunity to partner with other organizations that provide the training for your employees, giving group discounts.
Right. Right.
Or
Yes.
allowing an instructor from that organization to come to your organization and teach the entire staff so that everybody gets certified. There are ways that you can partner with other organizations to help your employees. That's championship. That's allyship. That's mentorship, but that's also being a great manager and asking the employee, what is it that I can do to help you? What is it that I can do to help you? But it's those performance meetings that we all dread that you can make the difference in an employee's life.
What I'm hearing is that there's not a difference in terms of a startup and in terms of an existing. I think the key of, and I want to make sure I'm saying the key takeaways here is that both organizations need to have an assessment. Both organizations need to have a plan. Both organizations need to look at what's in their toolkit and also have the data to be able to find out what is their employees looking for in terms of career development, and then supply that access, be it a certification or what I call, like you said, there's champions within the organization, and then having to have champions actually be it in a practice or an organization. It also allows for what I call not just you have a few linchpins and not just one person who has all the knowledge base of your daily operations, and when they leave, it's almost like a grinding halt. You have actually other folks that can still take on the mantle when that employee leaves, because you have other shared knowledge base or other skill sets that are still within your organization that will sustain and make it continuously viable. So, we've said a lot. I think that there are plenty nuggets that I hope that everyone has taken in regards to career development. Let's do a pivot a bit here in terms of work life. And I'm asking you in terms of your, what is your top three? And I say top three because we can get overwhelmed with so many, how to's and so many guys. But I think there are some things that are mutually beneficial as a topic that is across the board, that whether woman, man, can really apply in the work life, and even just to be able to use it for a few minutes. And it doesn't take, I don't think, and I'm asking you, is a day or an hour or hours in order to benefit from something that you as the person need in order to have that balance.
Absolutely. At the very beginning, we said that culture was so important,
Mhm.
for a leader to exude that career development, the growth of their employees important. Well, the same applies to you as the individual. You have to be in a culture that allows you to have the work-life balance that you need. First, you need to identify what is work-life balance, and know that work-life balance is different for all of us. It's different for all of us. What may work for you may not work for me, and vice versa.
I agree.
But it's important to understand, what does that look like? And I will tell you, the first thing to look at is your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Make
Yes.
sure that you define boundaries and you set boundaries. And one of those boundaries can be that you need to be in a culture that supports maybe what you define as work life balance, and that could be a flexible work arrangement. For
Mm-hmm.
myself, that is something that when I'm looking for a job, I I'm not going anywhere unless they have a flexible work arrangement. It could be different from what the previous employer provided me, but as long as they have a flexible work arrangement, I'm there, because that is a boundary of mine.
Right.
And I want to make sure that I'm in a culture that will not overstep that boundary, that will allow me to be the best mother, the best wife, and the best employee at the same time. Another thing that has really worked for me is a method called 30, 30, 30, 30. Now,
Oh,
this
that
method
sounds interesting.
yes, it allows me to be able to fit everybody in the same day. So for the first
Okay.
30 minutes, you
Mm-hmm.
have opportunity to spend time with your family. That could be dinner, that could be going, for a walk in the park, anything. 30 minutes spending time with family. The next 30 minutes, that could be spending time with your kids, helping them with baths, helping them with homework, helping them with reading a story before they go to bed. whatever that is, the next 30 minutes is spending time with your husband. And that could be whatever it is. And if you don't have a husband, spending time cleaning your house. You know? And
Right.
the last 30 minutes is spending time with you. Spending time with you, whatever that looks like that for you. For me, I have found 30 minutes of spending time on Facebook watching television that is senseless has been my 30 minutes. But it allows me opportunity to rejuvenate myself, to get myself together because it's been a long day, because I was working, because I was cooking, because I was doing the laundry, doing all the things. It allowed me time to be with myself. So following that rule, the 30, 30, 30, 30, has allowed me to be able to share my time with everybody.
And that I think is so pivotal in terms of, I like that 30, 30, 30. I like the fact that towards the end, you're able to, you know, uh, down, for me, it's wind down. That 30 minutes for me is going to be wind down. There isn't anything happening other than, like you said, decompressing and whatnot. So, Latika, thank you so much. I mean, these are so good nuggets. And I think that there are, digestible. We take them in chunks. And that's really what I wanted to, for this discussion. I think that we've hit some really good points and where to start and how to start. And then for work-life balance, I couldn't stress enough. Boundaries as well is important, and not to mention, uh, the ability to be able to parse out time and be able to spend time with important people. So that said, how can we reach you and what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Sharon. So I am on social media at Visionary Initiatives, all one word. And you are also able to find more about what I do. I have a full career resource center on my website at Visionary. It's www.visionary-initiatives.com. We have a full career resource center, newsletter, all the things to help you in career with advice, with tips and strategies on balancing and managing motherhood.
Great. I will put that back in the comments, folks. And I just want to thank you for my guest and her time. I really appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you, Latika. Have a great week, and we'll hopefully we'll chat soon. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.